I'm here with Mr. Bobby Liebling from Pentagram, a living heavy metal legend, living heavy rock legend. First thing first, I want to ask you about the formation of Pentagram, its origin. Like, how did it came to be, and how old were you when you first formed the band?
I started the band with my drummer, Jeff O'Keefe, the original drummer, in '71. So that makes me what? 17 actually.
Okay.
When we started, and we wanted to do something that was heavy like Blue Cheer. That was our idea when we first started. You know.
As heavy as life.
As heavy as you can get.
That's the thing. So, what was the first Pentagram song you ever wrote?
Oh boy. The first Pentagram song I ever wrote was probably, well, Pentagram went through a stage at the beginning where we were called something different. It was the same people. Yeah. But when we first started to call it Pentagram, I'd say the first song probably was a song called Peak, or Living in Ramshead was one of the...
Has Peak ever been released?
No, it's on one of those lo-fi tapes that are up on YouTube, the practice.
It's over there somewhere, it's over there.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
So you say you changed names very time, like one of those was that you called yourself Macabre?
Yeah.
And you released your first 7-inch, right? Which is Before Warm.
Yeah.
So...
it was actually not released though. It was just a demo. It was a demo. It was not signed to any company or anything.
It's independent.
It wasn't even independent. It was just a demo.
Shit. So, how many copies were of that Macabre?
Okay, the first 500 copies that were made were misprint.
Okay.
It's a MACBRE, McBreed. Right?
Without the A.
Yeah, so we got the pressing plant to give us the second 500 for nothing.
That's good.
Because they made it misprint on the label, but there's 500 of the misprint 500.
How was the distribution and the reception of the public of that 1,000 first Macabre 7 inches?
Well, they weren't released. They were just demo singles.
But you gave them away?
Yeah, we gave them away and tried to sell some of them, and we were trying to actually to shop that to a label.
No.
But nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted any of our singles. Actually, the only one that got any feel from a major label was Under My Thumb, which is the remake Stone song, which is back with a live version when the Screams come with 2 guitars. And that was in '74. And we got some heavy feelers from Capitol, from RCA, and from Atlantic and Elektra. But they never, bought into it really.
No. So
there was only 100 copies made of Under My Thumb.
Oh, it's
very rare.
Is that the rarest one?
Yeah, definitely.
So how many demos and 7 inches you released in this first period?
There were four singles.
4 singles, right?
Yeah, Before Warm, Lazy Lady, then Hurricane, Earth Flight, and then Under My Thumb live When Screams Come in the studio live. And then the 4th one was the High Voltage single, which was Living in a Ram's Head and When the Screams Come.
With the 2 guitars, right?
Yeah.
So is that the only official release with Pentagram with 2 guitars?
No, with 2 guitars. It was 2 guitars and bass, but...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, the 2 guitars are also on Under My Thumb and When the Screams Come single.
Cool.
2 different guitar players, though. I mean, both guitar players are different on both of them.
So, are there any more unreleased recordings from that 2 guitar period? Is there anything else released yet?
Yes, as a matter of fact, from the High Voltage band, the Screams and Ram's Head single. Yeah, there's some stuff that's coming up soon, probably this summer.
So there's still unreleased stuff.
There's a live album that we. It's not a proper recording, but it was recorded very well, and it was recorded outdoors at a concert that we gave, a private concert in Southern Virginia in the U.S. and in a county called Spotsylvania. and we're going to be releasing that real soon. So
Good to know.
It'll be limited, very limited,
I'm gonna get it.
and it will probably be only on CD.
Cool.
Probably not on vinyl.
Independent?
Well, it's my friend has a new label called Salon Guard Records, and they just released a CD of an old practice session that I did with a band I was with in 1980 for 2 months. The band was called Crossroads, and he just released a 5-song EP on CD that has 3 originals and 2 covers on it. We do Electric Phase by UFO, and Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers by ZZ Top, and then there's 3 originals. One of them's When the Screams Come, and 2 of them nobody's ever heard. He probably has a copy with him here, I think.
I'll need to get one of those. So
that was only a very limited release, like 75 or 100 copies.
So regarding this same first kind of period from the 70s, a few years ago you released an unreleased song on a Flexi 7-inch on Decibel, right?
Bang It Out.
Which is Bang It Out. So where did that recording came from? It's like an old rehearsal?
Just from rehearsal. Yeah, from the same rehearsal sessions that all of our old things that get thrown up on YouTube from the early 70s, the original band.
Cool.
Yeah.
How did that 7-inch Flexi came to be?
They just wanted to put it, you know, they said, can we do a Flexi disc on you? I didn't even know it would come out till you know.
And
I think it was in Decibel, wasn't it?
It was Decibel, yeah. It's like you say, okay, I have this song and that's it?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
They just wanted to put an odd song out, you know.
So
And that's the only version of that song there is. So.
There's not other song. There's not a version. Yeah, look it up.
No.
So, in more than one interview, I read that instead of being like into a huge band, as the influence for Pentagram is mostly like the old late '60s, early '70s American bands like Blue Cheer, Cerro Baltimore, Dust, and whatnot. So,
yeah.
How was your approach to these bands back then, considering it's so different to get to music nowadays than to get to it in early 70s?
Well, in the early 70s, the only way you could get to it was if there were a couple of underground stations. There were FM stations that would have like a show that would come on radio once a week or once a month, and it would be like a 3-hour or 6-hour radio show of all underground stuff. So my drummer and I were very enthusiastic about listening to new music and all the underground bands because we liked all the bands that didn't make it big. All of them, like you just said, you know, Baltimore and Dust and bands like that, and Groundhogs, you know, Stray, all the bands that really never got their day in the sun.
You mentioned Groundhog. I know Groundhog, but like a friend recommended it to me like 3 months ago, and I haven't saved, so I need to go listen to that one.
T.S. McPhee was a total mad genius. He was incredible. I got to see the Groundhogs live too, so I'm really happy. But I got to see all those bands. I was very lucky. I got to see Lord Baltimore, both album tours, live.
They're heavy as fuck.
Yeah.
So Baltimore, 71, right? The first album?
Mm-hmm.
Heavy as
Both
fuck.
of them. And I got to see Dust 6 times.
Shit, that's...
And,
so the band were touring and you
They come to a local place, yeah.
Cool.
Because there was a DJ that lived in Washington, D.C. area named Barry Richards. And he's cult famous now because he had a TV show on a local TV station called Turn On, right? And we used to think he was really corny, and we made fun of him and stuff like that. He wore cheap suits and it, but Barry was the man. He brought all the fucking bands to D.C. area that you could imagine. You bought Baltimore, Groundhogs, Bob Seger System, Atomic Rooster, Boomerang, Dust, just even the Stooges, you know.
Atomic Rooster is such a great band.
Yeah, I saw them.
That walks behind you.
Saw them 3 nights in a row.
Cool. 3 nights in a row?
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Chicken Shack. He brought all these really, really underground, the Amboy Dukes, back when they were a small band, you know.
So now there's a lot of things to read about and listen to for both me and the people seeing the interview. That's the thing. That's
I'm
what
very
it is.
fortunate, man, to have gotten to see that era of music.
And I have a couple more questions regarding this period. Like, how was the scene back in your early to mid, late 70s period? Like, did you play with any other band? Was there any sort of camaraderie with other bands?
There wasn't camaraderie nearly like there is today, because back then the object was to blow the other band off the stage. If you played with them, it was competition all the way. You wanted to outdo the other band. Just like Ted Nugent talks about that, and Wayne Kramer used to talk about that in Detroit. When they got up there, you get up to kill. It's like, we want to do better than the band before us, and better than the band after us. And back then there was not a lot of bands, but there wasn't camaraderie like that. When we were getting up there, it was like, we're going to wipe you out. That was the attitude. It was different back then.
Yeah. I'd say it's been different since, like, I don't know,
like
2010, 2000, something like that.
Yeah, well, really, since the 80s, it changed a whole lot, because bands became they started to intermingle socially and stuff like that. And in the 90s, you got the internet comes about and all that kind of thing, networking. Yeah, time changes. Right. Back then, you had to, the only way you could hear those bands was an underground radio station, or we would just go in once a week. My drummer's dad would take us down to the record stores in Washington, D.C., and they'd have like maybe one rack of imports or something, and one rack of promo copies. Yeah, you doing the thing, right?
This look cool.
And this only got guitars, or something like that, or three-piece. We look up to see how heavy they were and make sure back then there's no Mellotron and no keyboard or whatever,
You're not much into the keyboard and the prog kind of thing?
No. We were on the slam and heavy hard rock. Heavy rock, yeah.
Good.
So that's the only way you could do it. You wander into the store, flip through the rack, you see something interesting. Like, that's how I discovered Thin Lizzy, for instance, right? And there was one store that had one little box of imports that they would get from England. And I was going through there one day and I saw the first Thin Lizzy album, and it just got into the store. Right? And I said, let's try this home.
Which one you got from Thin Lizzy?
The first album.
The first album.
Right, which is not as good as the
latest. A bit more folkish, I'd say.
Yeah, but it had Look What the Wind Just Blew In, and some really cool cuts too. But
was there any sort of tape trading back in the 70s? Like, be it of both albums you got and you wanted to trade with your friends, or tape trading regarding like Pentagram band and regarding demo tapes and whatnot?
Yeah, there was. Of course, it wasn't as abundant as it became later. And there was, without the social media network, you didn't trade them with people around the world. You trade them with people in the neighborhood or in the same city if you knew somebody who had something rare, because there wasn't a network like there is now. Now you can talk to somebody in Russia on the phone, right, from the U.S., and say, oh, you like records? And he's talking to him in his face. You couldn't do that, the telephone was connected to the wall back then. When you left the house, there's no conversation.
Time changes.
Yeah.
There's 3 semi-official compilations from the 90s, right? 2 on Peace Records, and the other one is Human Hurricane, right? How did those 90s, 70s compilation came to be?
Well, the ones on Peace Records are total bootlegged and not supposed to have been made.
Okay.
They were pirated. I was getting high too much and had a bad drug habit. And this guy would come over to my house and he wanted all the rare stuff. And I, at the time, was addicted to drugs, and I'd sell him, rare things, and under the condition that he's not going to resell them, he's not going to copy them, and so forth and so on. So this little shit makes his own copies and presses them and starts selling them under the table, black market, and like that. As far as Human Hurricane, that I legally licensed that to a company in Canada. And there was also If the Winds Would Change, which is another compilations of things. They're all from rehearsals. Human Hurricane's all just rehearsal tapes. If the Winds Would Change is all just rehearsal tapes.
So how much of this material from these 3 two unofficial CDs and this Human Hurricane official one got into Last Days Here and Last Days Here too?
Probably about half. Well, the first Days Here collection is about half songs from demos, but they were official demos that we recorded in the studio, and we were going to try to sell to companies or to get signed with. The second First Days Here 2, that is one album of, again, demo stuff that was officially recorded and meant to try to shop to a record label to get signed. And then there's the second album on First Days Here 2 was all basement rehearsals, just live at our rehearsal place, and they had to be really doctored up and engineered, and mastered properly, because they're bad recorded, they're lo-fi.
The magic of technology.
Yeah,
right?
but they're still pretty lo-fi. They brought out a lot better sound in them, but Relapse did, and all that. But we had to take them and do a lot of work on them in the studio, which Jeff O'Keefe did most of that, the drummer. With a couple other people, Sean Peltier.
So was Jeff O'Keefe heavily invested into this reissues of both Pentagram compilations?
What do you mean invested?
Oh, like you say, like he remastered and cleaned up a little bit.
Well, he didn't do the work, but he had them done at studios.
Oh, okay, good.
And would sit and had some production input, obviously, and tell him, I think it needs this, I think it needs that. I really didn't. I didn't at the time. I didn't want the stuff put out.
Are you glad it got out?
Sure, of course.
Of course, right?
Yeah, I'm very glad. But I wasn't into wanting to change the recording sound or anything like that. And I didn't think any of that stuff was worthy of being on a record, because I'm not into lo-fi.
But it is.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I'm just not into lo-fi recordings, and they had to really beef those up and do a lot of tricks in the studio to bring them out.
After this last 7-inch with the 2 guitars, Pentagram disbanded, right?
Yeah.
And then you got into Death Row with Victor Griffin, right?
The Death Row original lineup in Death Row, which came to be known as Marty Sweeney on bass, Joe Hasselbander on drums, and Victor Griffin on guitar, and myself, is not the original Death Row lineup. The original Death Row lineup was Joe Hasselbander on drums and Victor Griffin on guitar, and Lee Abney on bass. He was from Tennessee, from the same town Victor was from. Joe went down there to Tennessee because Joe was dating Victor's sister at the time. And,
I read that.
Yeah, and he found these 2 guys playing, Victor and Lee, and said, hey, I could make the band a lot more profile, a lot more well-known stuff if you guys could move up to Washington, D.C. Because they were in a very small town called Morristown, Tennessee, and there's no music scene or anything. So they came up here, and I auditioned for them. Victor wanted to have me in the band right away, and Joe, because Victor asked about the High Voltage single, right? He said, I like the singer on there. How about we get him? And Joe said, hey, he's in a lot of trouble.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just neither here nor there, though. I auditioned for Death Row, and that was me, Victor, and Joe, and I got hired right away. The first, about half an hour, and then about 2 weeks later, Lee was married, and his wife was in Tennessee, and she came up here and made him leave the band and come back home to Tennessee.
Oh, shit.
So we said, well, now what do we do for bass player? We call Marty Sweeney. And so then it became the
classic
the Death Row lineup. Yeah.
So a year after you joined Death Row, you recorded and released the All Your Sins demo, right?
About a year and a half, yeah.
So how did this demo came to be? How was the composing process for this demo?
Well, Victor and I formed a very strong bond immediately in the band. We loved each other's writing, and I knew he had a bunch of songs. Those are the ones that I tried out by doing, and he liked my songs a whole lot, and I had a whole bunch of them too. So we finally, when we decided we were going to actually commit the stuff to an actual big recording, you know, an official recording of some kind, we did the Death Row All Your Sins cassette, which is, there was only 250 copies of that made. And,
Not much.
No. And that was not a release either. It was released by us to sell at parties, or, you know, if we played
shows and whatnot.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And we hardly had any shows at that point still. But it was just Victor and I's writing meshed very well, the material. So that first album is half of his and half of mine. The Death Row stuff, Victor's writing was complementary to mine and vice versa, so we put half of each other's. Wherever you see the name Griffin, he wrote the music and the lyrics. Okay, wherever you see the name Liebling, same thing, music and lyrics.
Okay.
And we did very little. People always thought we wrote a lot of stuff together, because All Your Sins is the only song on the first album that's co-write.
And everything else, it's...
everything else is his
or
mine, his or mine,
yeah. But that's the thing, it's like, you played some of the 70s Pentagram song with Death Row,
Mm-hmm.
but on a different tuning, right? So it has this different kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, we were tuned down, and Victor used the drop tuning, which is the low E string, tuned down only. And we also brought all the other strings down considerably too, to make it very low.
Huh.
Yeah, and it came out a little bit different, a little novelty. Yeah.
So there's no other official Death Row release, right?
Yes, there is.
Which one?
Death Row Alive in Death.
The video.
Which is, it's a DVD. No, it's a CD, a double CD.
Ah, it's from the 2000, right?
Yeah, about 2000. I think that was 2004 or so.
Yeah.
And then there's also Alive in Death on, excuse me, on Game 2 Records out of Denver. That's an album.
So that's a live show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What about that live show recorded from '83 that's on YouTube and that you can see on some videos? It's on a DVD afterwards. 83.
Oh, the Silver Fox?
Probably, yeah.
Wearing leather and all that, and there's nobody inside the place.
There's nobody inside the place?
Yeah, there's about 5 people.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit.
We used to make people leave, we'd scare them and played so loud. So they'd leave.
That sounds heavy as fuck. It's like a really heavy presentation.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun. The cool thing about that, and it was also a drag though, we loved doing all the makeup stuff and you know, the leather and the glam blend. But we figured it was really a drag, and it's a shame that right at the beginning of the 80s when we were doing that we couldn't get out to the West Coast.
No.
Because if we would have gotten to the West Coast of the United States, we would have been right in the mix with bands like Motley Crue and all those, and I think we would have really stood a chance of hitting it big.
Even bands like Slayer were like a little bit of makeup by the beginning, that's the thing.
Yeah, and we were very unusual because we played real heavy stuff, and we also had that Kiss type of, you know, makeup thing.
So whose idea was this aesthetic change in image from with Death Row?
Well, in Pentagram, I was always very glam oriented. I'm a New York Dolls fanatic, Iggy, and that kind of thing. I always wore a lot of makeup on stage, and a lot of glammy clothes, chicks' tops, you know, chicks' boots. And Victor, turned out, when we first came to play the first gig, he dressed all up and put on all this wild makeup. I was like, cool, I like that. So we kind of blended that way too. And Joe Hasselman, our drummer, loved that kind of thing too, like the glam bands.
So pretty much then everyone just...
It was a group thing, yeah. Marty never liked doing it, but he went along with the program.
I mean, if it's 3 versus 1, it's like it would look super weird.
Yeah, I guess.
So in '85, you re-released the Death Row demo as the first Pentagram album, right?
Yeah.
But you re-recorded some things.
We didn't re-record any of them.
No, it's only a new mix?
Remixed, yeah.
So we
And very little changes.
Very little changes.
Yeah.
So mostly the cover.
Yeah, the cover was of course different, and you know, a little bit of remixing. remaster.
Were you happy with that remix remaster from the tape to the first edition?
Well, are you talking about now the first self-titled Pentagram album?
I'm talking about the first self-titled Pentagram album.
Right, not Relentless as
No,
it
I'm
came
talking
to
as
be
the
known.
independent first Pentagram album.
It was a strange story with that because our drummer Joe Hasselwander had just left the band, and it was around '84 he joined Kim Simmons' band, Savoy Brown, and he went away, and then he was asked to join Raven shortly after that. But when we had that album in the can, so to speak, all of a sudden these 3 albums came out on Pentagram Records, okay, and I owned the name. So
Which 3 albums?
one was called Phantom Lord,
I know that one.
okay,
Yeah.
which is Jack Starr and Joe Hasselwander. It's got 5 German guys on there,
I've seen that one.
right? And then there's the other one is called
It's a red one,
Devil
right?
Child.
Yeah,
Devil Child.
that's an EP.
That's 3 men, okay, and that's again Jack Starr and Joe Hasselwander.
Okay.
And then there was the Joe Hasselwander solo album, Lady Killer.
Also on Pentagram Records.
Yeah, all 3 of those were on Pentagram Records. So I heard about this and I got really pissed off, and I said, I want to give us a contract now. So I called them up and they said Pentagram Records. I said, Pentagram, this is Pentagram. I said, I want to speak to the president right now. And I spoke to him and I said, I have a trademark on that name, and it's to provide musical entertainment recordings and so forth and so on. So it was an infringement. And I said, I want a recording contract now. And I want
And you would.
to sign her out. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, got it.
So, Pentagram Records wasn't originally your own independent label. It was another label.
No, it was
and then
another label, yeah.
with the same
operating-
name.
Yeah, they were distributed by Dutch East India Trading,
Okay.
and it became, a large distributor after that. But yeah, I said, if you want to keep putting those records out, you can sign us.
Ah.
And they gave way to doing that.
How many copies of that first Pentagram album was?
I
released?
really never found out for sure. I think there was probably about 2,500.
Not many.
Not a lot, no.
And they go super expensive nowadays.
Oh my God. I don't have one. I can't afford it.
Me neither.
Damn, that's about $1,000 for a
It's
copy
like
of it.
for $1,000, I can flank to Euro both ways. It's like, nah.
Yeah.
So, after the release of this Pentagram, the first Pentagram album,
Uh-huh.
how long did it took for you to record Day of Reckoning? Because it was recorded in '85 as well, right?
I was recording in '86 actually.
'86.
And released in '87. The second album, we recorded at a different studio than the first album. The first album is an 8-track recording, and the second album is a 16-track recording.
Both live?
No, they're both overdubbed.
Overdub. So it's like first drums, then
Yeah.
guitars. Okay, yeah.
Rhythm tracks, back then you'd record the drums, bass,
Bass,
and
and
rhythm guitar
rhythm guitar.
together, and then put the leads over and the lead vocals over it.
So it was recorded like kind of live.
Yeah.
Cool.
You record the rhythm tracks were always generally done live in the studio by bands, and then you would put the extra guitar parts overdub and stuff like that. And their recording's the same situation. But by the time Day of Reckoning was recorded, Joe had left the band, and he was with Raven. So we had Stuart Rose play drums on the original Day of Reckoning recording. That's the one that's got the mausoleum. It's a real pretty cover with all the tombstone and stuff. And Stuart Rose is a drummer on that. Joe Hasselwander played only on Burning Savior, which is the long cut on Day of Reckoning. And it came to be really that we kind of ruined that album as far as the second one. Okay, Day of Reckoning was on Napalm Records.
That's independent as well?
What's that?
That's an independent label as well?
It's also Dutch East India,
Okay.
right? And they had to change the name from Pentagram Records So they changed it to Napalm Records.
Oh, so it's the same label?
It's the same label.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I couldn't find information about it.
Yeah, and we had that one come out on Napalm, and afterwards, which we'll get to, which is the Peaceville era, because that we ruined. We feel like Victor and I felt like we practically ruined the Reckoning album when it came out as the now more popular and well-known version, which is Joe Hasselbander on drums. Which one?
It's this one.
Well, that's the original cover.
That's the original cover, but it's the
recording with Joe on drums.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Does it tell on this one?
It should say.
Yeah, see Joe Hasselbander's on drums. Yeah, the original one is Stuart Rose on drums, and Joe's on one song. So
why is Joe only on one song of the original one?
Well, we wanted him to play on the song Burning Savior, and he was touring with Raven already.
So
he came in the studio
busy.
and did that. Yeah, and he had quit the band and everything, so we were like kind of standoffish at the time of each other and so forth. And later on, we added Joe and took Stuart's drums off, you know, the original drum tracks, and had Joe replay the drums, and we messed it all up because we did the re-recording of the album and the remixing of it in 3 days, okay? And it was real quick, and the drums, if you'll notice, on the popular Their Reckoning one, where Joe was playing all the drums, are off beat in certain places.
Okay.
They lag or they speed up, and it's not Joe's fault, right? He wasn't playing to a click track back then. And it was engineering, you know, it was just, didn't get it, you know, in the pocket.
Is there any chance to see a re-release of the original Day of Reckoning recording, or that's lost?
I don't think there is. It's not lost, but I don't think so.
Okay.
No. So
I'm gonna check because you just answered like 5 questions.
Okay.
So, give me a sec. Oh yeah, like then afterwards you split up with Pentagram. What happened with Pentagram after you split up? By the release of Day of Reckoning, the band was already done, right?
by the original?
By the original release of Day of Reckoning, yeah.
No. Right after that, though. Shortly after that, yeah. We played some live gigs. We played for about a year with Stuart on drums.
Okay.
And Marty Sweeney and Victor and myself still. And then we split up like in '87.
Before the release or after the release of the album itself?
After the release.
After the release.
Yeah. Because we played about, a few dozen gigs at least with Stuart on drums. And we did a little bit of traveling around the DC area, tri-state area as they call it, in DC, Maryland, Virginia. And then at that time, let's see, so many things.
So many years.
This is, I gotta write a book someday, guys. Anyway, it just wasn't really happening for us. We were losing interest overall because we didn't get a lot of gigs, and the pay was lousy, and we weren't under any record contract to anybody, and we had 2 albums come out and they didn't sell well.
No.
So
how was a Pentagram gig back then on this period, like their first 2 albums kind of thing? How many people went to a regular Pentagram show?
Maybe a couple hundred.
Okay.
150, 200 people. And they were all in clubs. Small
so like a small
places.
packed club.
Yeah, and a small not packed club too. A small half empty club. And we thought we were going to take off, like really do it. And it just kind of didn't happen. We didn't have any label support or any advertising or any of that kind of stuff. It's just we gave way.
Would you consider an important factor of that was the place where you lived in?
Very much.
Compared to living in like New York or LA or whatnot.
Yes, that was a major factor now that you bring that up. Washington, D.C. had the fucking worst music scene in history. I mean, that I've ever seen before. There was nothing there. And all the punk thing had started up. And those bands were starting to get work more and more and more.
Yeah.
Black Flag, bands like those,
Late 70s, early 80s, right?
Yeah, 9 through 5, 3, and several others, Fugazi. bands like that. And heavy rock was kind of dying down around us, and we couldn't get gigs. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of push in that area, and there was not places to play either.
It was dead.
It was a dead city. Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, true dead city.
Yeah, it really was.
So,
and plus the only other bands that were around there were the hair bands.
It didn't quite fit with what you did.
No, we didn't fit in anywhere. We didn't fit anywhere. Right. We were glammy. We were wearing all leather, playing loud as shit.
Yeah.
Playing heavy
dark shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So by '93, Peaceville picked you up, right? Did anything happen between this period of Pentagram, or with you, between the split of Pentagram after Day of Reckoning and Peaceville re-releases?
There were several attempts at this and that. Yeah, I did put another Pentagram together in '88, '89, which had the original bass player, Greg Main, and Randy Palmer, one of the original guitar players from back in the '70s, and myself, and we originally used Jeff O'Keefe on drums even for just a short time before he moved away from the area, and the guitar player Ted Feldman, who hadn't been in Pentagram ever. We started practicing, and it was a 2-guitar Pentagram. It was really cool, and I really liked it, and I was back with the old guys, you know, and it was fun, but nothing ever came from it or anything. I mean, we played one gig live. That's it.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Then afterwards,
and then Peaceful comes after that.
But that's the thing. When Peaceful picked you up, you reunited because Peaceful picked you up, or you were reunited and Peaceful picked you up? Okay.
No, we reunited because Peaceful wanted it. Because at that time, Victor had moved out to the West Coast.
Okay.
In the late '80s, because he wanted to try to make it out on the West Coast. So Wino had moved out there from Obsessed.
Because Washington is dead.
Exactly. And California was really happening with that stuff, you know. So they moved out to the West Coast. Marty just played around locally, bass player, and Joe was on tour with Raven constantly. You know, I mean, he's on tour 200 days a year, 250 days a year.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and so I got a letter one day from Peaceville Records in England, and it was like, wow. We have a small label that we're trying to get off the ground, and we're really interested in signing Pentagram for 3 albums.
So that's the thing. It's like they picked you up and they re-released both, and you got instantly the contract for the third one, right?
Right, before Warren. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and so it was really cool. I remember I rode the train from Washington D.C. up to New York. And President Hammy, Paul Hamshaw at the time of Peaceville, flew in from England and personally met with me at a hotel.
And signed you up.
And signed the contract.
Cool.
Yeah.
So why did Peaceville decide to use pretty much the same cover for both Relentless and Day of Reckoning? Any idea?
Your guess is as good as mine. That stunk. We hated that.
Label
plus, yeah, because I mean, our first album cover wasn't good. It was cheesy a little bit, but at least it was colorful and a little different. And it wasn't like it was supposed to be. It was supposed to go from one end, the lowest left, to the top right and say Pentagram, and the white around the purple was supposed to be silver and risen.
And it only looks on the top instead.
Yeah, which is all crooked, just sitting there. Yeah. But
nothing comes out the way you expected.
You're right, exactly. And the second album, we loved the cover. Our photographer, the guy who did all the Death Row photographs and stuff like that, he went over to Paris to take the picture for their Reckoning cover personally with that mausoleum with all the...
No.
Yeah. So, I don't know why. I guess it saved a lot of money.
Maybe. So
pissed us off.
So on this period when you reunited because of the Peaceville contract, did the live playing, touring, and everything else became a little bit different?
Yeah, there wasn't touring. We still never toured. I never toured in my entire life till 2009.
Okay.
Way later down the road. But we played a lot more in the tri-state area and maybe up as far as New York, way down the beach in Maryland or Southern Virginia. And we started getting a little more widespread, and we started getting a lot of gigs once we had the albums out on Peaceville, because Peaceville pushed us really heavily.
That's good.
We were one of their first, 8 bands or so, and they were a brand new label, so they pumped us a lot. And it wasn't monetary, but advertising, and advertising is what gets it, right?
So that's the first time Pentagram grew a little bit to a different audience, to play
93.
more. 93.
Yeah.
Took a while.
Why?
No, not why. It took a while.
Oh yeah,
It took a while.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, it did.
So, you released Before Warn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, like a year after the release of Relentless and the re-release of Relentless and
Right, and that's because Joe came back from Raven and rejoined Pentagram, and Marty was like semi-retired or just playing locally, and we didn't really have, when the first 2 albums were re-released, we weren't a functioning unit yet. We had played many years together, but we weren't a band. And Joe was on tour. And so it was like, well, Joe, are you gonna come back and do this? And Joe said, yeah. And he did. And that was a big reason we got functional again, And we got more extravagant and louder and heavier.
Heavier as fuck.
Yeah, we got real heavy. And spooky. That's the thing.
A lot of songs from this Before Warn album are also from the Death Row period, right? Like you played live on this show, on these early shows.
Yeah, I'd say some of them are. Yeah. I mean, there were some new ones too. And some of them Victor had written out on the West Coast, his.
Okay.
Wolf's Blood, Vampire Love, Too Late. Victor wrote those when he was living in California. And then he brought them back, he played them for me, because we were getting ready to do Before Warn. And I said, let me sing those, I like those. And so he played me the demos, and I learned them, and, And then there were the, like you said, some of the older Pentagram songs, like Ask No More, and things like that were mine. Yeah.
What do you think, were you happy with the rearranged version of Before Warn on that album, the one that closes the album?
Yeah, I was. They weren't as much as me. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, I liked it because it's more an epic, long thing.
It feels super different to the original.
It's very different. Yeah, it was not meant to be anything like the original, and we wanted a night and day difference. And I just had the idea, well, you can make it slow and make it more, somber.
Did you play it live like that? Like the version of the newer version of the album back then?
Yeah, yeah.
How long did this period, this line of Pentagram lasted? Like after Before Warned?
Not long. Let's see, after Before Warned, I'd say about a year, if that.
Okay.
Not even.
Not even?
No, not even. And
a year after Before Warned, or since you got the piece of the contract?
I'd say a year after Before Warned, maybe 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Not long at all.
Not that long.
Yeah. By the time Before Warned came out, we were getting pretty much on the outs with each other.
After that, you reunited again and released a couple of demos with Joe, right?
Yeah.
Joe playing drums and a couple of other guys from
yes.
Were they from Phantom Lord or some of the bands that Joe played with, right?
No. No. Ned Maloney was the bass player on the Change of Heart.
Yeah,
EP.
that demo, yeah.
Yeah, that demo. We recorded that just to try to get signed again, because Peaceville wanted another album after Before Warned. So we got a bass player, Ned, who was in Kim Simmons' band with Joe, and Joe played drums. And then the guitar player, Greg Ryder, he was from a British band called Armageddon. Okay. No, Avenger.
Yeah, I looked it up. He's the guy who plays on Killer Elite, the second Avenger album.
Yeah,
that's a great album.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guitar player too. He's a slinger.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's his style. It's a heavy metal kind of thing.
Yeah. And
what happened to the lineup after the demo?
we just did that to try to get signed. Peaceville rejected it.
Shit.
Right away they said we don't want that. And I played bass on Review Your Choices on Change of Heart.
That I didn't know.
Yeah.
So this lineup didn't work out, and there's listed on internet another demo from '97. Sometimes it's listed as Oppression.
Oh, Oppression is not the same thing. But see, by that time, the band had become, it was really just me and Victor left around the time of Change of Heart coming out.
Okay.
And we decided, let's give it another shot. And Victor's nephew, Greg Turley, played bass.
With you for a long time, right?
And yeah, but he joined actually in '95. And he was the bass player. His band was called Oppression.
Okay.
That he had, which was another local doomy kind of band, a Pentagram type of sounding thing, with all different people that were never in Pentagram. He joined Pentagram, and we got Gary Isom on drums, who was in Spirit Caravan, and we decided to go on as that. And Victor and I said, okay, well, let's try to do it again. So we went back out and played a bunch of gigs, actually. Not a lot, but several gigs, and we were good. And we were happy with it for a little while.
I couldn't find that '97 demo anywhere. I looked it up. I couldn't find it.
Oppression, yeah.
It's gotta be there somewhere. It's gotta be there. But
There's not a released thing that you can get, I don't think. I once had a cassette copy, and there was some CDRs.
But that's the thing. Someone got it and probably uploaded or something.
I mean, because Greg has all those recordings. We were going to do a couple of those songs, kind of rearranged. When the original Lightning in a Bottle was going to get done, the old band that was performing with me. Yeah.
So, after this...
Oh yeah, Greg and I recorded about 4 songs also that were just Greg playing everything in the drum machine. Greg played guitar and bass, and I sang and used the drum machine. And there was some of those are up on the line too. Thrill of the Kill and Tomorrow's Bleach, and these odd infinitum songs from God knows where.
And that's an unusual format for Pentagram, like drum machine and.
Yeah. It was just because we wanted to record. We just were hungry to try to get some material done, working on it.
Still be active.
Yeah, just be active musically.
So a few years after this, you released a couple of albums with Joe doing everything, right?
Yeah.
Playing drums, guitars, bass, and you doing all the vocals.
Yes.
So, how did you rehearse, and how did this period of Pentagram work, considering it's so different to what it was before?
Okay, Victor had started to do Place of Skulls at the end of the '90s. Okay, and Joe and I weren't doing anything, and this little Italian label called Black Widow wrote us a letter. And they said, we don't have much money, but we would love to put out a new album by Pentagram, blah, blah, blah. So Joe called me up and he said, I just got this letter from overseas. He was all excited. And I said, oh boy, yeah, good. And I was really messed up at the time too. A lot of drugging, heavy drugging. And I just really wanted to do a record real bad. And so did he. He said, why don't you and me do it? And we'll call it Pentagram. And so we went and we recorded Review Your Choices.
That's how it came to be. So on Review Your Choices and on Sub Basement as well, there's also a lot of 70s songs, and there's some other ones composed by Joe and you.
Yeah.
How did that work out? Like, how did that composition process happen?
Joe had instrumental, guitar written music track stuff, and he'd play me on tape recorder or whatever, and I'd write words for the newer stuff that went on those albums. And then there were some of the old Pentagram, like you said, the Burning Rays and the Diver and all those other Review Choices. But then he wrote the music to like Oregon Slave and Megalania and there's some killer songs.
And good songs.
Yeah, and we decided let's just mix it up. Part old, part brand new. Yeah.
Cool.
We never played a live gig during the Review Choices Sub-Basement era at all. There's one gig that's up on YouTube too, where people go, "Oh, you junkie, don't sure, we got our money back, rip off." We practiced to do a Sub-Basement live set, which Sub-Basement was always my favorite album, always by
Still
far. No, the new one is.
Okay.
And I'm not just saying that. I think the new one's fantastic. I'm blown away. I can't believe we did the new one, and it was done quickly too, real fast. And but we didn't play any gigs live. We were supposed to play one gig, and I was real messed up, and kept driving to the gig, which is 30 miles from my house, and taking the wrong turn at the end. And I did this and drove back to Washington, D.C. 5 times, all night long with my girlfriend, and we were all fucked up in the car. And just kept taking the wrong turn. Finally, I showed up. There was half of one song left, and they had played the set on stage from Sub-Basement, and it's on YouTube. People coming pissed off, and Joe was Joe hot. He was really mad at me. And I understand why, of course. But one thing I will say is, in my own defense, actually, is during all the years, everybody, and I said this to an interview earlier too, all the years people like to try to blame Pentagram's ups and downs on my drug use. That is such fucking bullshit. Yes, I was on drugs for many, 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 many years. I also didn't miss gigs like that one and the one at the Black Cat, which are both in the movie. Yeah. And they play those up like, oh yeah, he never shows up and all that. And even my guys had turned against me because in the movie Last Days Here, you should hear Victor talk about, you never know if Bobby's gonna come or not. And Joe said, oh, I don't know if he's gonna show up. That's a lot of crap. Come on, let's get real here. I've played maybe 5,000 fucking gigs in my life. What, I missed 3, 4? That's not bad percentage. Yeah, I would say that's batting pretty well.
Yeah, percentually wise, it's quite good.
Yeah, come on, and the only reason I was ever difficult to work with on another factor is because I had a vision, and I knew what the fuck I wanted exactly, always. And like my dear friend Sarah from says to me, she says, keep your eye on the prize. And that was what I had my whole career, is tunnel vision. I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna get there. And I never gave up. I call that's if you're doped out that bad, you don't give a fuck. Eventually, you just slide off the rocks. I had perseverance. I never gave up my dream. And I kept going after it, damn it, and now here we are.
Now you're living.
I'm living again, yeah.
That's the thing.
I want to live again, and I love it, man. The guys I'm playing with now, sensational musicians. It's so easy to get along with. We like to have fun. We go places, when we're on tour, and enjoy things together and enjoy each other's company. We have a great working relationship. I'm really more proud of the relationship of working together than I've ever been. And I'm proud of myself for having shown that, hey, if you persevere, like Greg Turley, my former bass player, he said, one of the keys to success is perseverance. Don't give up. Like I told people in interviews, I call myself and nickname myself the little engine that could, because that story is, I think I can, And you gotta keep doing it, man. This is what I do. This is how I eat, how I pay the rent, how I survive, pay all my bills, and so forth. And I never gave up, man. And I'm proud of myself for having done that, really. I don't think there's anything to talk about, all this bullshit that people come up with. Oh, you did this, you did that, you blah, blah, blah. And I thought I saw him. Give me a fucking break, man. I'm a human being, for one. For two, you who's talking at me, you're not perfect either, goddammit. So don't preach the gospel to me,
Yeah.
Because you're preaching to the choir. and that's not good, you know?
It's not gonna turn up well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna keep on struggling, man. I'm gonna keep on playing until I fall over one day up there, because this is what I do. My purpose on the earth, I feel, personally, was to entertain people by making them happy, make them feel good, make them appreciate my art, and have a little bit, at least, come on, of respect for what I've done. Because shit, you can't do all this if you're all fucked up. I mean, I'm not anymore at all, but all through those years, I couldn't have kept going. What, I stopped here, I stopped there, so everybody stops sometimes. Don't you go to the bathroom?
Of course.
You know? There's no big gaps in Pentagram, and there's no million member changes either. How many bands have no member changes in 54 years?
Nah, not all.
Right. So when people say, oh, all these members you went through, look at the list of members, that's a lot of crap to me.
Nah.
It's like people go about their separate ways and their separate lives, just like when Greg and Matt and Ryan and I parted ways this last year ago. We decided, hey, they have families that they're raised and businesses aside from music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that. This is my business, and it's what I'm in business to do, and I want to keep doing it. So we kind of thought it out real carefully, and we very lovingly parted ways at the end. It was like, hey, Bobby has to keep going and touring. You got to make records, because that's what he does. Just like Greg runs a printing business. He has to keep printing pamphlets or whatever.
Yeah.
He's printing for people, right? I got to keep printing too, you know, playing. You know, and we said, you know, they wish me well. I wish them well. I love the guys. But it was time to part.
And do something new.
Yeah, and do something new. And thank God I did, man. Because I'm happy with it. I love it. I love when I get up on stage now. It's like, wow, it's a new dawn, you know?
So,
Go back, yes.
time-wise, yeah, we will get there again.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, we are in the early 2000s now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you about the Death Row reunion, like in 2000, 2001. How and why did that happen? How many shows did you play back in that period?
We played one show.
One show.
Yeah, and it was just because we knew there was a call that we hadn't played together, all of us on stage, in a long, long time. And on that gig, we had Lee Abney play bass and get up on stage with us and do it, you know, because he's the original Death Row guy. We played one gig, and then that was all there was supposed to be, was one gig.
That's it.
Let them have one more dose, right? And then, you know, go see another doctor.
This is a question that a friend told me to ask because I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the internet, there's a song, Please Don't Forget Me,
Mm-hmm.
but it says it's played by Stone Bunny. What is Stone Bunny? Did it ever existed? What is that internet rumor or whatever regarding Stone Bunny?
Stone Bunny was the first, like, the pre-inception to the first Pentagram. The band was Jeff O'Keefe on drums, Greg Mean on bass, the original Pentagram guys from the classic lineup as they call it now, and John Jennings on guitar. John Jennings was Mary Chapin Carpenter's producer, went on to make millions, and they called their band Space Meat. And I don't like joke names, I'm sorry. You know, and funny haha names when it's heavy music. I don't think you should be joking around. And their band was called Space Meat, and then they had me join. And when I joined, I said, come on, I'd love to join, but Space Meat? No, we gotta change the name. And they I said to them, I said, you might as well call the band Stone Bunny. And they said, oh, that's a great name. And they called the band.
And that's it.
Yeah. And again, I was like, oh my God, what I got?
Is there any recordings by Stone Bunny?
Yes. The stuff by Stone Bunny that's on YouTube,
Yeah.
that's listed as Stone Bunny, is part Stone Bunny, John, Greg, Jeff, me, and part of it is the first Pentagram. It's mislisted. Okay.
Please don't forget me. It's a Pentagram song.
It's a Pentagram song, and it's played by Pentagram. It's got 2 guitars, which was at that time Jeff O'Keefe had switched to guitar. John Jennings is still on guitar. Greg wasn't in it. We got Vince McAllister on bass guitar, who's the real guitar player for the Pentagram, the Prodigy, and Steve Martin, a buddy of mine from high school, on drums. He was a jazz drummer. So that was the original Pentagram. John Jennings, Jeff O'Keefe, Vince McAllister, Steve Martin, and myself, and all the members are playing different instruments and stuff.
And that's where.
And that's Please Don't Forget Me. Yes, cool. One version, Please Don't Forget Me, which is identical to the Witchcraft version. If you listen,
super similar. Yeah,
it's exactly the same.
Please Don't Forget Me haven't been released in any Pentagram release, right?
No.
Is it ever gonna be released in any Pentagram release?
I doubt it.
You doubt it?
I doubt it. I'm tired of doing all the rehash.
Nah.
I mean, come on, we've had some songs out, you know, how many When the Screams Comes are? There's like 20 of them.
Probably.
Yeah. And I'm tired of doing all the old stuff. That's why when we did the new album, we only included a couple ones.
So, a few years after, chronological wise, the Last Days Here documentary was released. Would you consider this gave a boost to Pentagram popularity regarding playing?
Absolutely, hell yeah. And you know, I thank 914 Pictures and Sean Pellet, and Demian Fenton, who did all the camera stuff. And I mean, it was still with one camera walking around with me for
a handheld camera, right?
Yeah, for 6 years.
6 years? That's a long period.
Yeah. It started in 2006, came out in 12 or so, I think it was,
Wow.
The company went bankrupt a bunch of times. They didn't have money for film and stuff. I mean, it was a little tiny company back then. They had one other movie out called The Art of the Steal, which did very well in theaters and became a renowned film. And then they decided to do me. And I said, okay, well, I'll do the movie, but I'll only do it if you keep it 100. Nothing doctored up.
Yeah.
I want all the shit left in there.
It's gonna be real.
Junky, and you know, I'm all fucked up, and if you can't show me like that, and people can't accept that, which is hard to watch for me now. It's very hard to watch. I mean, it's pretty raw and touching.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it's very intense.
Heavy,
yeah, it's very intense to watch.
Heavy.
And when I see it, it makes me cry. When I watch it, it's like, wow, what a mess. And then, you know, during the making of that, in the last few years, it's almost finished up, and they had 600 hours on the cutting room floor.
Shit.
Of outtake film.
That's a lot of film.
600 hours.
Yeah.
For a 93-minute movie.
So, before skipping to the next question, I remember something like on the documentary, there's the mention of a 2005 demo, and there's a mention of 2 songs that doesn't exist in every other release that were shown to Housecore Records. What about those songs and that demo? Does it really exist? It's only for yourselves to look something?
It doesn't really exist.
Doesn't really exist?
No. Those were things that were recorded by the 2008 and 9 Pentagram.
That's not the Show 'em How lineup, right? It's a different one?
No, it's a different one.
Okay.
No, that's Russ Strahan and Gary Isom and Mark Ammon. And that was the first Pentagram that toured worldwide ever.
Okay.
And also, one of the songs called South of the Swamp appears on a thing called The Basement Chronicles, Night Owl, which is myself and Dave Sherman, all drunk and stoned in the basement with a drum machine, and doing all the songs improv one day. And that's what that album is. And South of the Swamp was written by Russ Strahan, who's a dear guy and a great guitar player. He was in that first revamping, trying to do the comeback Pentagram, Webster Hall thing in the movie. That's that band.
Okay, cool. That's that band.
Yeah.
Well,
That's your house chord you can assign. You know, things like that. And then I had just met my wife to be. She wasn't my wife yet. And all the movie, you know, as you know, probably most people probably know, you know, how things pan out and so forth and so on. And it was rocky road at the beginning, and I was still pretty majorly fucked up, you know, on and off, and just trying hard. But you know, by the grace of the powers that be, I somehow pulled it together and got out on the road and started the tour finally in 2009.
that was the boost.
Yeah, that was the big one, yeah.
So, regarding gigging.
9, and then followed by the film, and then when the film came out,
the 2 albums.
yeah, they followed my wife and I. They flew my wife and I to opening features at IFC theaters, and Robert Redford bought it for Sundance Selects and called us personally and bought the movie. You know, picked it up, and
That's cool.
yeah,
super
yeah,
cool.
and it was like, wow, we're doing something.
Yeah.
Yay!
It's happening. It's finally happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, many years after that, you came to Chile for the first time in
Yes.
2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was that? What were your thoughts on that show? Because I remember I went there. It was crazy as fuck. There was like, I never thought I'd see a mosh pit and a flare light up on a train.
I've never seen
game.
someone not get kicked out of a place and go dancing around in cutoffs, no shirt, with a road flare up in the air. My gosh, they're gonna burn the shit out and they're gonna burn the place down. I've never seen a frenzied crowd like Piranha.
What do you think of the South American crowd overall?
They're all like that. You guys are all like that, man. You fucking love your heavy rock. No shit. I've never seen anywhere in the world, and I thought Europe was crazy. And Europe was wild. In Germany, they're but over here, I never imagined that anything could be like this. When I came here in 2022, I finally got a taste of what, if you want to call it that, I like to keep it on the humble side, but if you want to get a taste of what real rock star feels like, you guys made me feel like that, and no place else ever has. All the South American countries, you guys are the wildest and the best.
It's wild. It's like
You go cuckoo for your music. You're like, yeah! They almost turned the van over, and they're running down the street chasing you, and they have half a dozen policemen in uniform with tear gas and all that, holding it, you know, to get you out of a place. Now I know how the Beatles felt.
crazy shit.
It's
but
wild.
For example, you mentioned like the flare. You never see that, but it's like a super usual thing here in Chile. It's like, especially like more extreme metal shows. It's like it's like if you see like I don't know, a Slayer gig, there's gonna be like 10 flares on a show. It's crazy. But I like it. I like it because I've been to shows in other countries, but always here it's something different. It's different.
Yeah, it is.
It's definitely something else.
It's like a frenzied pack of piranha going after the prey, and it's like, my God, I've never seen anything in my life. It's a trip, man. That's why when these guys got with me, I said, we gotta come back to South America, because they had never been here.
Oh, cool.
None of them have ever been here. And I said, you're going to experience something like you just fucking never imagined in your life. They make you feel like a rock star. And, you know, it puts me in my place. It lets me see, wow, you think you've gotten up there or whatever. Come to South America.
It's that real shit.
Yeah, they keep it honored here. Yeah.
So, this year or last year? This year saw the release of the new album, right?
Yes.
Lightning on the Bottle. We already talked a little bit about that, but I wanted to ask you, like you already talked about the lineup, but I wanted to talk about the composition process of this new album, like how did it came to be?
Okay, originally, when the other band was about to split up, and things were like kind of waning, as they would say, you know, on off, Tony and Henry had already put together and written about a dozen songs and sent them to me because they wanted me to sing them. And they wanted to step in and become Pentagram. I was at the time, I have a very strong allegiance to my troops as such, and I wouldn't leave. It was like, no, I'm not just going to kick these guys out. I've been with them for years. They're dear to me. I love them. You know, I'm not going to do that. You have an allegiance, man. You stick with your gang, you know? They had written songs. I didn't listen to them real closely. I was in a bad position. I had just come back, and it was going to be the very last gigs with the other group. And they were already being listed as Pentagram all-time farewell gigs in Europe, which I knew was not. Anyway, I knew this, you know, but such as advertising. And finally, they had written all these songs. They had rough rhythm tracks of all of them, a dozen already. And I had never met Tony Reed or Scooter in my life. I'd known Henry on and off for about 35, 40 years. Finally, when that happened, I came home. I left my folks' house. I walked out. The house was filled with furniture, everything like that. No way to move any of it. No way to store stuff or anything like that. All the, you know, keepsakes, everything. And I turned the key and went on tour to Europe. Came back to no place, nowhere to go, and the only money I was going to have was from that one tour, that last go around. So I lived in a
farewell tour.
Yeah, so I lived in a motel in Pennsylvania because I wanted to be near my wife and son because we had a very good reconciliation after many years of separation, and still love her to death and so forth, and love my son dearly. He's my only child, and we had been apart for many years, and I wanted to be close to them, so I moved to Pennsylvania from Maryland and just stayed in a motel. The same motel that I stayed in the first time her and I separated 10 years earlier. So I was almost completely out of money and totally flat broke, and I couldn't put my head around listening to these songs. I didn't have a tape player, nothing. Just sitting in the motel every day, wondering what I'm going to do when the money goes. It's gone, right? And I knew I had got to work. I have to, you know, it's time to put on the big boy pants, you know, stand up for yourself, or you're going to sink in the quicksand this time, buddy. You got nothing to fall back on. You have no relatives left, you know, and so forth, except my boy and my wife. But I moved up to Pennsylvania, and my money was totally, at the very last, I think I had $500 to my name left to pay 1 week of motel. And we, this woman who had been living at the hotel also, she had gotten kicked out of the motel room. She had nowhere to stay. I said, well, you could stay in my motel room if you want to. Right? No, this is not it's platonic, you know, just trying to be nice, not sleep with or any of that kind of crap. And she said, okay, because I'm about to get an apartment. And it's like, I said, you are in an apartment? I said, you looking at rent thing, you know? Yeah, but I'm not gonna get it for 2 weeks. So she stayed there for 2 weeks at my hotel room, and in and out. Her kitty cat too, who's still there. He's still with us. And then she finally called me on the last day. The money was all gone. I had nothing but the street in front of me and a suitcase. And ring, 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 and hi. And she called me up and said, I got the apartment, you wanna come on? Another reprieve.
New flash of light.
Yeah. So I went over there, and I've been staying there ever since. And ran a room of my own. I'm near my wife and kid, and then I told the guys as soon as I did that, it was like, you still want to do this? Yeah, I want to do this. Let's go. And so I said, well, I've got a bunch of lyrics written. All right, can we do some of my stuff? You know, and we'll work it all together, and we'll work it out some kind of which way. You know, we're all professionals. And I had never met Tony and Scooter, like I said, in my life until the night before we recorded the record.
Shit, yes.
Yeah, so they had these rough tracks. I came and flew from Pennsylvania across the whole U.S. to Seattle. It was 3,200 miles, and met Tony Reed, now guitar player, and Scooter came later, and Henry made me feel very comfortable at first. And Tony and I hit it off in 15 minutes. It was like bread and butter, and
there's chemistry.
Yeah, we had something special, and you could tell. And the next day, we went in the recording studio, and they had already recorded by that time about 8 more songs. They had like 20 songs.
Wow.
And they were already in the can. Not the finished guitar tracks, but rough rhythm tracks.
The demo.
Yeah, and Tony played all the bass too, because Tony's an incredible bass player, drummer, and guitar player, and vocalist. He outshines, by far. And they said, well, how do you want to do this? And I said, well, just let me play me one. And they started playing, and I really listened then, of course, because it was a new thing, and I had the spark. Like, I want to create. And I had a pile of words that didn't go to anything. And I said, I like that music there. Can I hear that again? And then like 15 minutes later, I walked into the vocal booth and sang, rough tracked it, and then double tracked it, and we put all the vocals onto 12 songs in 3.5 days.
It's really
with the double tracking and the vocal harmonies, and we put them all on there, and we had lightning in a bottle.
So since we're pretty much done with Pentagram chronological wise.
Yep. Not yet. I want more to come.
More to until the day you drop. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit about different projects you have. Like first, I wanted to ask about The Limit.
Okay, The Limit is the other band that I play in, and that's with the punk legend Sonny Vincent from the Testers back in Max's, Kansas City, early 70s days. And we had an album come out in 2021 on Spark Records, and I'm really, really proud of that too. We recorded that over in Portugal right before the pandemic shut the world down. We got home 2 weeks later, the world shut down. And it's got, it features Fabian D. Dahmers on guitar from Udo, and who's a flash as hell, incredible guitar player. And it had Jimmy Recca from the Stooges on bass, and Hugo Conan and Juan Ventura on bass, guitar and drums. They're from Portuguese band Dawn Rider. And we went over, and we had never rehearsed together or anything like that. And we had 3 days of rehearsal, had to learn a whole album of songs. Then we had to play a showcase on the 4th day we'd been together. We had to play live. We played in Portugal this fall. And then we had to go in the next day and record the record. And we recorded that in 4 days, the whole thing. Flew in the parts remote. Some of them, Fabian Dahmers he's got a huge schedule. Dude, over playing all the time. I played probably 250, 300 days a year.
Wow.
And so forth. And I'm really proud of that. It's called Caveman Logic. We just finished the 2nd album. Just finished it, and finally after a couple of years of work. And I'm really happy about that. We have a different bass player and a different drummer. And Sonny and I are still heading up the thing. Hugo's still on board, and we wrote all the songs on the new album too.
Were you into punk back then?
I have always loved classic punk rock. I'm a street guy at heart. I like music that's got a attitude and a little, you don't like it? I like attitude in music because that's feeling. That makes stuff intense.
Punk's attitude.
Yeah, punk's definitely got attitude. And the original punk bands, the Damned, the Pistols, the Saints, the Ramones, the Buzzcocks, the Dickies, bands like that. I love all those bands.
So now we're talking about punk. I want to talk about the shows you did.
Okay, it's got that, but it also has the guitar lead playing is like Michael Schenker playing in a punk band.
Okay.
So it's a really strange blend of stuff. And Sonny and I really took careful aim at trying to put these two styles together, because really nothing's kind of like that. Think about it. Not with real flashy shredding guitar and doing the horse you rode in on music. Raw power, you know.
So regarding this punk thing you like, what about the show you did with the Dead Boys?
Yeah. In 2017, I had the privilege of being the lead vocalist for the Dead Boys at the South by Southwest 40th anniversary Dead Boys show. And that was a blast, man. Johnny Blitz on drums and Cheetah on guitar, and I loved it to death, man. There's a couple of songs, I believe, up on YouTube. There's not much shown of that. It had a lot of constraints and licensed things on it, but there's also a few songs that we wrote together and recorded in the studio the day after that are not finished. I'd love someday to finish them.
Hopefully.
But yeah. But I loved working with Cheetah. Cheetah's a blast. He's an old guy like me.
Cool.
He got the
the attitude.
Yeah, he's got the attitude, definitely.
The last band, besides Pentagram, that I wanted to ask about is, what the hell is B-Demon?
B-Demon was Randy Palmer, his dream, his vision. He was in Pentagram in 73 and then again in 74 for a short time. And he's also in the one in 88 and 89. Again, B-Demon was his dream band. He was always a Black Sabbath ultra fanatic, and he wanted to play all just bummer, doomy kind of things like that.
Heavy.
Yeah, very, very heavy, yes. So B-Demon is a project. We used to go down, Jeff O'Keefe and Randy and myself. We would go down, and Mike Matthews, the bass player. We'd go down to the warehouse that Pentagram rehearsed in about once a month or once every 2 months and record a song. Okay, and I sang into 2 little plastic microphones and a 7-inch reel-to-reel tape recorder.
That's it.
On the table, yeah. And it had sound on sound, so overdub lead playing. And we did all Randy songs. And we put them together one at a time. We never thought that would be released, my God. That's pretty bizarre. And it did.
It did. I know there's one CD with a lot of B-Demon demos and whatnot. It's good to know because there's not much info about that on the internet as well.
Right.
And me, as a big nerd, I need to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The demon was fun. It's always fun. We get all stoned out. You know, the stuff was recorded in 73, roughly.
Oh shit, that's super old. Like, same time with early Pentagram.
Yeah, same time. We go down and practice here, and then maybe if we had a free night that week, we'd go down there and do Randy's thing. Yeah.
Well,
it's the same tape recorder that did all the first days here too. Rehearsal tape.
Same rehearsal room?
Yeah, same rehearsal room, same 2 little plastic mics sitting on the table. Yeah. And reel-to-reel Robert's 7-inch tape recorder, sound on sound.
So there's a little bit something more that I'd like to ask you about, which is I want to ask you about some records that I've read on some interviews that you like. I want to ask you a little bit about them. Right. Like, I know you like Early Scorpions, right? What do you think of this one? You like it?
I love it.
The Scorpions.
I like Fly People Fly. The first time I heard Speedy's Coming was a motherfucker.
Great. This is.
I like the single better of Speedy's Coming.
That's a different recording?
It's a total retake.
Okay, I need to listen.
Total retake. It's much better. It's wild. Willie Roth is really
the really young Roth period of the Scorpions is unbeatable.
The early Roth stuff is where it's at. Yeah.
What about this? What about Blizzard Cult? Do you like Blizzard Cult?
I love the early stuff. Yeah, that album is their masterpiece.
This is my favorite one.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah,
like, no question.
Flaming Telepaths.
That's the thing. It's like the whole album is great, but finishing with Flaming Telepaths and Astronomy, like pretty much together. I can't listen to those 2 songs alone. Sorry, it's just way too good.
Oh man, Career of Evil. My God, words.
Oh, yeah. Cool. My favorite one was still great band. probably one of my favorite American rock bands.
They're great, man. The early Blue Oyster first 4 albums.
That's your favorites, first 4?
Yeah, first 3 actually.
Up till that one.
And I'm not that nuts about the first one only because it's not recorded as well.
Okay.
But the second and third, Tyranny and Mutation, Secret Treasure, 11 on the 1 to 10, they're really, they get it. I saw them like about 4 or 5 times in that year.
And that period, cool.
Yeah, loud as hell. Really spooky too. Eric Bloom's were all black leather and he's a cool guy.
What about this live album? UFO with Strange Night.
One of the better live albums ever put out. So I'm a UFO nut and a trivia buff about UFO and all the offshoots and everything. Phil Mogg is one of my favorite singers ever. He's street to me. He's really gritty. I like the later UFO stuff. See, not a lot of people give a lot of listening.
Later, I have like Ace.
I don't know.
Nowadays.
Yeah, I think Conspiracy of Stars is probably their best album along with No Heavy Petting.
Wow.
There's opposite ends of the earth, but I love them both, man.
So you say this is one of your favorite live albums?
It's one of the best live albums,
Which other live albums are up there?
Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's killer.
That to me is like probably the live album.
One I like better. The live Grand Funk double.
Okay.
Oh, man.
I don't think I haven't listened to that one.
That's Mel Shocker, Don Brewer, and Mark Farner had magic.
Then
Funk, soul, and killer heavy live.
Then it's going to be added to the list to listen to.
You got to listen to Grand Funk Live, yeah.
What about Wishbone Ash, Argus?
No words I can say, man. They're my favorite band in history. Andy Powell is my idol all the way down the line. I've never heard finesse, beauty, and a blend of a bluesy, jazzy thing with the guitar harmonies as sweet as birds singing. And Wishbone got it, you know.
Is this your favorite?
No.
Which one is it?
Everybody's favorite. Not mine.
I
like their later stuff too.
What?
I like Blue Horizon and later. I like Front Page News. There's Just Testing, Bonafide. Yeah, I like everything about Wishbone Ash.
So much.
I don't think Wishbone Ash have ever done a bad song.
Okay.
None. I give all their songs. I've seen Wishbone Ash 17 times.
And you want to see them in 8?
Absolutely, yes. My buddy just saw them a couple of months ago in a club. The capacity was 68. And
68?
That's all the people to hold. Full.
Shit.
And only 25 people came. This was on a real rainy night up outside of Cape Cod in Boston. And he got me a really beautiful, great big poster with Andy with his old Flying V autographed to me, and the set list, of course. Which cool. I treasure that stuff. Yeah, and I also I got a picture of me and Andy together. Wishbone's 40th anniversary show at the Sellersville Theater in Pennsylvania. I got the gold-plated Wishbone 40 shot glasses for the. Yeah, I love Wishbone Ash, man, all the way down the line, all the member lineups and everything.
Yeah,
Andy Powell's my hero.
I read in an interview that you like Wishbone Ash. I had no idea it was your favorite band ever.
They're my favorite, yeah. And I leave them out a lot of times, and I get embarrassed afterwards because I was like, yeah, the Groundhogs and Captain Beyond, and I forget, and then I come back after the interview and I say, damn, I left How I Leave Wishbone out of there, man. They're the king
band.
Yeah.
What about Sabbath? Are you into Sabbath?
I'm into Sabbath and was back then. Not as much later, but still think that they have some great stuff later too. I love Cross Purposes, for instance. I love Tony Martin.
Tony Martin is super good. Headless Cross and
Tony Martin can sing his ass off, man. I mean, as far as technical quality singing, he's probably the best singer they've ever had. I love Ian Gillan. Glenn Hughes is my all-time favorite lead vocalist. And I love him on 7 Stars, my favorite Sabbath album, believe it or not.
Oh, that's an unusual
weird,
take.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. People always say, you always picked a weird one, man. I love 7 Star. God damn, Glenn belts it.
It's quite different, but still Tony Iommi, that's the thing.
It's got some of his finest lead playing on 7 Star. Yeah. Heart Like a Wheel, motherfucker.
So I know you're a Stooges fan. What do you think of the Iggy Pop first 2 Iggy Pop albums, which are pretty much composed by David
Bowie? And Lust for Life?
Lust for Life, yeah, this is Lust for Life.
I think The Idiot and Lust for Life were kind of a little bit weaker. I'm a raw power
Okay.
fanatico. I know every click, pop, and squeak, and every bit of air in between the notes on raw power. Raw Power is the best. It's my favorite album ever made. Is Raw Power. Nothing jams it up your rear end like Raw Power does.
That's the album.
That's the album, man. Attitude, James Williamson, The Skull. Yeah.
And well, this is the last one. What do you think of Cream? Disraeli Gears.
I was never crazy into Cream, but I think this album is fantastic. I think Disraeli Gears has got the woman tone, the clapping, boop, 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 which I'm a blue freak for guitar, and Fresh Cream also has it. And the material on these two and the studio Wheels of Fire album are really fantastic. I was never a Cream nut, but they were really, I like it better than I did nowadays. And I love that cover, man. It glows under black light way back then.
Way back then.
Yeah, 67. Jesus, that's a long fucking time ago, man.
Yeah.
I was only a little kid. No, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll take it.
So pretty much we've done everything I wanted to ask you, because it's been a long interview. I hope you liked it.
Yes, I had fun.
But I have one question left regarding what not Pentagram, but what you have become like with this being viral thing, getting huge one day out of the blue. Like we were just outside the hotel, and the guy came and it's like, "Oh, you're a guy from me. Can I take a picture with you?" So how did this impact in your life and on the way Pentagram is received by the fans and the people that want to know them?
I don't know, man. It's overwhelming. I mean, the meme stuff is fun, and I also know it can lift the profile like nothing ever has. I mean, I always dreamt that something I'm gonna do someday on Facebook or Instagram will go viral. And I was like, geez, I know 60 million? That's a little viral.
A little bit, yeah.
And now we get stopped in the airports and restaurants and this and that and the other. And
have you been recognized a lot during this last tour thanks to this viral video?
Oh yeah, a whole lot. Yeah, I mean, people just flock. It's been strange, man. I'm not used to it at all. You know, people stop us. I mean, we had soccer moms all stop us in the airport, want autographs and pictures. You know, I don't play a lot of soccer. It's fun, man. It's fun. I'm just riding the wave. I'm gonna ride it for what it's worth, you know, till I fall off the board.
Some unexpected attention, but it's there. It's good. That's there.
It's still good. Yes. Yeah. It's still good. It's all good, and I'm gonna keep on shooting for the moon and with Pentagram as long as I can do it.
I think that's pretty much it. We've talked a lot. So just want to thank you for your time, Bobby.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for doing this.
The hell out of it.